The next most important thing to create a quality video is lighting. Everything depends on lighting. Now here's a crash course on lighting. Most lighting setups consist of 3 lights. The key light, which is your main light, your fill light, which fills any additional light needed where your key light couldn't fill in, and the backlight to separate the subject from the background, creating depth of field. Now knowing this, let's start with the key light. 2 things to remember about the key light. Go big and maybe get a little close. The bigger the light and closer to the subject, the softer the light will be. You want soft light as opposed to hard light, and going big and getting close will give you the softest light you need for the best cinematic professional look. Next is the position of the key light. Don't fall in the trap of placing the light right in front of the subject. Go high and angle down. So I would place the key light off center from the camera and maybe 45 degrees angling down from above. This will create a drop shadow on the chin, which will create depth, which will create a cinematic and professional look. Next is to determine how bright the light should be. The best way to do this is to balance the key light with your exposure settings on your camera, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Now sometimes the key light creates too much of a shadow on the face, and we need to fill in the shadows just a little bit more. Sometimes you can get away with a reflector, but sometimes you might need another light source. Some people utilize a window or an outside light, but the outside light is so unpredictable with changing clouds, you never know what light you're going to get. It's up to you on how much fill light you need, but I try to strike a balance between a shadow cinematic look versus way too dark of a shadow. As you can see here, we have struck a good balance here. Lastly is the backlight. Now the purpose of the backlight is to create a separation between the subject and the background. The backlight will create a rim light around the subject's head and shoulders, thus creating separation from the back wall. The last thing you want to do is fade into the background. Okay, this is what it looks like without lighting. Let's go ahead and set up our lighting. So this is the key light. Okay. And it looks pretty good, although there's a really deep shadow off to her left side of her face. So I'm going to go ahead and fill it in with some fill light. And that gets us pretty close. Okay. We can still do some more fine tuning, but that's looking pretty good. Now that we know a little bit about light placement, let's talk about what lights to use. First, you will need the light itself. A light stand, and a softbox for each light setup. The lights I recommend for video tutorials are the Aputure 120Ds because they're built well and they're very common in the filming industry. If you want a slightly less expensive light with the same result, I recommend the Amaron light, which is also built by Aputure, but the only difference here is the durability. So for example, the Aputure 120Ds have a metal housing for toughness, which is great for travel, whereas the Amaron light has plastic housing. So both are great lights, so it just really depends on your budget. Now if you're trying to stay within the $1,000 budget range, I would recommend the Fovitec 2-Light Fluorescent Studio Lighting Kit. It comes with 2 lights, 2 light stands, and 2 softboxes all in one package. It allows you to turn off some of the lights to control your brightness, but just remember, the light will be good, but it won't be great. So that's it for lighting. We learned a lot, but again, if you have questions, please reach out.